Welcome everyone. So yeah, as Bernard mentioned, this is my second Adobe Canada Roadshow. So last year I actually presented on our full migration into the Adobe CMS. At this time last year, we basically had only been live in the new system for about a month. Now we're going on being close to a full year live in the new system. So I get to showcase not just a bit about how we migrated and how we made the switch, but the cool things that we've been doing in the new system now that we have full control over our tool set. So yeah, my name is Marco Cecchicaro. I'm a senior tech writer and tool specialist at Blackberry. Yes, Blackberry still does exist, I'm sure. We don't do phones anymore. We are now a very different company, but I'm still very happy to be there, and I think we're doing the right things as a company now. We basically have a very diverse portfolio of different software products, and we have our hands in a lot of different industries now, including automotive, security consulting, and my particular area of the business, which is enterprise software. So I'm a member of the enterprise docs team at Blackberry. If you guys wanted to take a quick look at what we do, if you go to docs.blackberry.com, that is our full website that we launched and built on the AEM platform during our migration and at the conclusion of our migration. So essentially the products that we write about are basically just software that allows you as a working professional to do your job more easily and more efficiently while also protecting your company's valuable information. So our focus today is, first I want to explain the challenging situation that our team faced as an enterprise docs team and why we chose the Adobe CMS as the solution to get out of that challenging situation. So one thing I'll explain real quick is the official brand name of the Adobe CMS is the XML Documentation for Adobe Experience Manager. It's a mouthful. That's why I refer to it as the Adobe CMS or the AEM CMS. But that is the full kind of official product name. Second, I'm going to share some do-it-yourself migration strategies that I think will be useful to anybody, whether you're entering into your first content management system or your latest in a series of content management systems. Quick show of hands, how many folks have either used a CMS or are using one now or will be using one in the near future? So a good portion of the room, maybe 40% or so. Same kind of question, how many folks use DITA or have used it or plan on transitioning to it at some point? So a little less than that, but okay. So I'll be referring to certain things like CMSs and DITAs. If there's anything I'm talking about that's unclear, please feel free to interrupt me and I can kind of explain it a little bit further. Third, I'm going to show you how we use the AEM CMS day to day and how it gives us complete control over every aspect of the content migration process. We no longer have to be held down or delayed by middlemen in that whole process. Because of the way we migrated and the way the tool is set up, we essentially have control over every piece of the process ourselves. And finally, I'll give you some real-world examples of the creative and innovative things that we've been able to do with the system since we went live in October of 2018. So Blackberry has a very long history with content management systems. It was actually one of the first tech companies in Canada to adopt a content management system and to adopt structured writing and the use of DITA back in 2006. So I was very lucky to be a co-op student at the time from the University of Waterloo, and I actually helped to implement Blackberry's very first CMS. They hired me as a full-time tech writer, and about 4 years later, I was a key player in the adoption of Blackberry's second content management system. So that was about 2010. We remained in that system until the end of 2018 when we made the switch to the Adobe CMS. Now during that time period, I'm sure it's not news to anybody in this room that Blackberry went through a very large transition. It was a time of extreme change at the company as we went from being the world's leading smartphone maker to a smaller company now focused on security, connectivity, and enterprise technologies. So that period of transition was difficult, but it was also a very important time for us in enterprise docs because the products that we had always owned and documented became the center of Blackberry's new strategy. That period of transition had a very significant impact on a lot of the other writing teams at Blackberry. So at one point, we had the writing team consisted of maybe 70 or 80 writers and editors across multiple departments that all used the same content management system with a dedicated documentation services IT team whose primary job was to manage, customize, and support that CMS. That dedicated team also created and maintained a custom in-house website that they built from scratch to house the content that we produced from that CMS. So this was a very complex, highly customized solution that really, it made sense at the time because it had a structure to support it and to keep it going. When the company changed course, a lot of that corporate structure changed. There were several personnel changes, some people left the company, and those dedicated IT resources were redistributed to other areas. So after all of those changes, our team was still fortunate to have many skilled, experienced tech writers, but the structure that we once relied on to keep our CMS and our website evolving no longer existed. So we could still produce content and we still had a high quality CMS, but we lacked control over our primary tools and how to present content to our customers. Our tools were stuck in stasis while our products and customer needs continued to evolve. So the natural solution to this problem was to look for a new CMS, one that would answer our needs in a way that would carry us into the future and give us more control over every aspect of what we do. So why was the AEM CMS the solution? We researched many different options for a new CMS, but we kept coming back to the AEM CMS, or the XML Documentation solution for Adobe Experience Manager. We learned that Blackberry's web team was actually already using the AEM web platform for all of Blackberry.com. The XML add-on, or the AEM CMS, was an appealing option because it would give us a fully featured CMS system that could simply plug in to that complete web platform. It offered or even improved on the features that we relied on to create high-quality docs, including version control, image management, structured authoring, multi-format output, built-in review tools, and localization support. The major bonus and the big selling point was that it would also give us the tools to create and launch an entirely new front-end website ourselves as a team of tech writers. So with our previous docs websites, we were always at the mercy of a middleman. So years ago, we had to deal with a third-party web vendor, and that came with its own limitations and frustrations. From about 2015 to late 2018, we were stuck with a website that was developed in-house, and after a certain period of time, the people that developed that in-house website were no longer at the company. So it was essentially a crumbling web solution. That system also put us at the mercy of Blackberry IT. So to give you an idea of what that's like, imagine trying to put a new string for a product and a new icon for that product onto your live website, and then waiting for a 3-week IT sprint to get that string and icon pushed. It was a bit of a nightmare, as you can imagine. So the AEM CMS offered a complete end-to-end system where we could rely on Blackberry's existing web team support, and then we could do everything ourselves, from content creation to building, launching, and maintaining a new site. The AEM CMS offered other advantages. It uses a browser-based console, which is ideal for our team, which is highly distributed across a lot of different locations. So we have some folks in the States, scattered across Canada. So we have an office in Ottawa, an office in Halifax. We have some contractors in India. So we don't have to rely on a desktop client that would require machines for workers. We all log in through the same console, a browser-based console, and we all access the system in the same way. Another major advantage is the fact that the tool offers a built-in topic editor within that browser console. So you don't have to rely on a licensed third-party authoring tool like Oxygen or XMetal. You log into one console and you do everything you need to do from that one console, from authoring to web creation to publishing. You don't have to rely on any third-party licensed solutions. Every CMS that Blackberry had used previously had a clear division between the CMS system that you used to author your content and then the web solution that presented that content to the world. So in our previous 2 CMS systems and web solutions, the writer would do all of their authoring and then spin a PDF or HTML output in the form of a zip file. The writer would then take the zip file, log into a separate web solution, and upload that zip file to present it to the world. The AEM CMS gave us something entirely different. A CMS that is fully integrated with the front end, and as a result gives you, the writer, complete control over every part of the process, making the entire thing much smoother and more efficient. So we'll dive into this a little bit later on, and I can actually show you what that level of control looks like at every stage of the process. But before we get to that, Before I show you how we work in AEM today and some of the innovative things we've been doing, I thought it would be useful to share 3 of the key migration strategies that set us up for success as we made that transition into the new system. So as I mentioned before, the AEM CMS is actually BlackBerry's 3rd content management system. The difference this time around was that we did not have a dedicated IT team who could figure out all of the hard parts of the migration for us. We had to plan it, execute it, and see it to a successful conclusion all ourselves within a 1-year period. So imagine moving 4,000 documents, more than 25,000 topics, and rebuilding an entire website from scratch in 1 calendar year. So as we were working on figuring out this complicated migration puzzle, it was both very intimidating and very exciting. And looking back on our year-long migration, which concluded in October of 2018, so a little less than 1 year ago, I'm actually very happy that we did it ourselves. The DIY approach that we were forced to take actually set us up for future success and made us into a stronger, more versatile, more knowledgeable team. So what are the DIY migration strategies that we used? So first, we formed dedicated working groups to plan and execute migration tasks. A CMS migration is a massive effort. You have to find some way to take this daunting project and to break it down into manageable, measurable tasks. In my opinion, the best decision my manager made was to form all of these different working groups that each tackled a specific aspect of the migration. So for example, we had one group that tackled the technical specifics of how to move our content from one system to another. We had another group that focused on designing the new website and figuring out how to build it up from scratch and the hierarchy and architecture to set up. We had another group that would focus on the localization aspects and how to transition our current localization process into the new tool. So every team member, every writer was asked to participate in the working group that most appealed to their interests. This wasn't really a project where it would just be handled by 4 or 5 people on our 20+ writer team. We asked every team member to get involved and to choose the group that appealed to their skill set and to their interests. Nobody would be on the sidelines in this migration project. So for example, if you had an interest in web design, you could be part of the UX and web working group. If you had an interest in localization, the localization working group would be the perfect fit. The working group strategy accomplished 3 key things. It forced us to develop a list of tasks for each group and to fit those tasks to an overall schedule and assign them to writers to complete. It kept things moving, gave us tangible goals, and gave us the structure that we needed to complete this complex project piece by piece. Second, it gave us the opportunity to develop expertise with the new tool. The members of the localization working group, for example, they became very familiar of how the new tool handled all that stuff, and they were able to develop an efficient process that they could roll out to the team. Myself, in leading the migration working group and the installation and configuration working groups, I learned so much about how the system works under the covers and the logic that it uses, so much so that now I am the CMS admin and I can essentially solve most of my users' problems on a daily basis. The members of the web working group gained a really good understanding of the core AEM platform and how we could use it to build pages and publish them to the live site. So third, the working group approach also encouraged us to find solutions to our problems and challenges by collaborating. So every working group would meet weekly, discuss the issues at hand, share ideas, demo options, and then discuss until we came to practical, realistic conclusions. None of the processes that our team uses today were decided and then imposed on us. They were all processes that we developed ourselves based on our own needs and based on our own discussions. And we continue to work together and to collaborate to evolve and adapt and improve those processes. So the working group strategy was key to our success because it made us accountable for every task that we had to complete, whether big or small. And it gave us opportunities to develop our knowledge of the new system and how we could use it to make ourselves better content providers. Another DIY migration strategy is to streamline your processes and requirements. So this strategy, to boil it down, it's all about making that distinction between what you need and what you're used to. So at different points in the migration, certain stakeholders would say that they needed something to work in the exact same way in the new system. But that's not really a case of need. That's more of a case of, I don't want to learn and I don't want to change, so I want this thing to work exactly the same way, which is not always the most positive attitude towards change. A major tool shift is a great opportunity to look at what you do and the way you do things so that you can keep and enhance the things that work, and you can discard or modify the things that don't work or the things that bog you down. To give you a practical example, in our previous CMS, we had about 6 or 7 different PDF output formats that each met a particular variation on our normal use case. As we put together our plans for the new output formats in the AEM system, we wanted one universal PDF output format and one universal HTML output format. This would cut down on complexity, simplify our relationship with the web developer who would be creating these output formats, and it would also make things easier for our writers. There would no longer be this confusion about which format do I use for this particular guide. There would simply be one universal format for each PDF and HTML. Some writers took issue with this strategy because it would force them to change the approach they used for certain types of guides. So for example, we had a training guide that used a special PDF output format to hide certain comments for instructors. Our argument there was that this doesn't need to be a special PDF output format. You can simply use the built-in tools of DITA, attributes, conditional text, DITA val files to control what gets shown and what gets hidden when you generate your output. So you can see there, it wasn't a case of need. It was a case of, I don't want to change and I don't want to learn, so let's just make the system do what it used to do. But that's not a great attitude towards change again. It wasn't a question of whether or not we could meet this particular use case. We certainly could. It was more a matter of changing attitudes and helping coworkers realize that it's flexible. You can always do things in a different way to make them better. And there are always opportunities to streamline technologies and processes, and a migration effort is the perfect time to put those into practice. To give you a couple more practical examples of how we streamline processes, we now use one image format across all of our outputs, so that's .png. Which is simplified image management and storage for our writers without sacrificing any quality whatsoever in our PDF or HTML outputs. And another really good example, in our previous CMS, for every single topic object, we would track individual content states. So you would set it to be draft, copy, edit, complete, however, whatever the status would be. But once we entered into the new system, we found that the versioning control models that it offered were a preferable method of tracking content states. So we did away with the overhead of tracking individual topic states and relied on the new versioning functionality of the tool. So the third and probably most important DIY migration strategy is to develop relationships within your company. So managing the migration as a team of tech writers, there were certain skill gaps that we had to deal with. Within our team, we didn't have the knowledge or expertise required to create the migration scripts that we needed to prep our content for the new system and to make certain XML changes. Likewise, we didn't have the development expertise to create a new PDF output format or a new HTML output format. But we knew that other groups within Blackberry had the skills and technical know-how to help us accomplish these very important pieces of the migration. So for example, to create our migration scripts, we reached out to our Blackberry software development team that creates all of our enterprise software products, and we secured the time of a co-op student or intern who was looking for a challenging, interesting project. She was very invested, and I worked with her to create scripts that allowed us to migrate more than 20,000 topics into our new system with very little issue whatsoever. To create our new output formats and to build the web templates that we needed to construct our new site, we put a lot of time and effort into building a great working relationship with Blackberry's web team. So we were very clear that our team wasn't just there to add more work to the plates of the existing workload of the web team. What we were really after was an initial setup of a PDF output format, an HTML output format, and then the web templates that we could use. Simply train us in how to use these and then let us go. We'll run our own show, we'll maintain the site ourselves, we'll construct the site ourselves. If things go wrong, we can come to you guys, or if we have an idea for how to innovate, we can come to you guys, but we're not here to add more churn to your schedule and to add more work onto your plate. And in fact, helping us set up our new site was a great benefit to the web team because it allowed them to add the doc site to the larger ecosystem of the other sites on blackberry.com. So now there could be closer integration between the doc site, the marketing site, the KB repository, sales contact forms, and so on. And that would all be possible because we all used AEM as our platform for getting our content out to the world. So the relationships that we built during migration and that we continue to build now give us access to valuable skill sets within the company that have set us up for current and future success. So how has the AEM CMS given us the power to innovate? The answer to this question is actually quite simple. When you have control over your tools in your creative space, you then have the opportunity to innovate and experiment. So what I'd like to do now is actually give you a bit of a whirlwind tour of how my team uses the AEM CMS day to day, and actually show you how it gives us complete control over every aspect of the content creation process. So what I'm going to show you now is actually the built-in topic editor that exists within the CMS system. So again, none of this is done on your desktop. You don't need FrameMaker, Oxygen, or any other type of authoring software. You simply log in to the browser-based console of AEM. It's going to jump directly to the topic because I set it up that way, but you just navigate through a tree or you use your favorites list to get to your content in whatever structure you've decided to store it in. And this is the web-based topic editor that exists within the tool. So I'm just going to flip it to edit mode. So this is actually live production content for a product that Blackberry released recently and that I did the documentation for. It's called Blackberry Intelligent Security. Let's give it a second, loading up here. So does anybody in the room, have you ever used Oxygen or a similar XML topic editor? Okay, just a second here. There we go. So in my opinion, the XML, the AEM CMS offers a topic editor that definitely has parity with anything you would see in Oxygen. And then on top of that, it also offers more intuitive features for things like adding images, adding web links, internal links to other topics, adding conref objects. It does everything you would expect a data-based topic editor to do. So as you can see here, I have the full tags on mode enabled. So if you're familiar at all with DITA, I'm sure you recognize a lot of this tagging that you see. And if you're not familiar with DITA, I'm sure you kind of recognize some of this tagging from HTML and kind of similar or adjacent concepts. When I say that it's context sensitive, I mean, for example, if you're within a certain tag and you open up the element list for inserting a new element, it will only show you the elements that are allowed at that particular position so that you can follow the proper rules of DITA in constructing your content. Inserting new elements is as easy as using a shortcut on your keyboard or using the insert element menu so that you can see what's available to insert. Inserting anything like images and conrefs is simply one button click. Of course it said that because I'm at an invalid position. But it's a one button click and then you simply navigate to the repo, find your image and insert it. Similarly, conref objects are basically used for things like reusable content. So for example, Blackberry uses conref objects for all of the product names that we use within our documentation. So I'll show you our conref repo. So every time we refer to either a Blackberry product or a third-party product, let's say Android or iOS, we simply access our internal repo, and then we simply select the object and we'll insert it. So let's say I'll insert Adobe, very practical. So you just select that object, and now it's been inserted within the topic. And the beauty of using that, I'm sure anybody who's done authoring with DITA understands the value of conrefs, but for those who are kind of new to DITA or unfamiliar, it's a way of adding a piece of content that you can put in 1,000 topics, and if you need to change that one thing, you don't have to change it 1,000 times. You change it one spot and it gets populated everywhere else because it's simply grabbing it from somewhere else. So to kind of sum up this bit of it, so the writer uses this tool, which is very intuitive, very easy to use, and fully featured in order to construct and create their content. The next stage of the process is actually to send their content to review. And actually, there's one more thing I would like to show you before I jump to that, is a little bit about the versioning model that is employed by the AEM CMS. So I'm sure whatever version tool you use right now or versioning system you use right now for your content, you need a way to simply say, for this particular release of the product, how do I version and freeze that content such that I have a record of it? Just going to flip views here because it's actually easier for me to show it in list view. So for this particular topic, I'm going to show the version history, and I can see that I have four versions that I created at different points in time. Picture these essentially as snapshots of the content. We generally snapshot our content when you release it out to the world so that you have a record set in stone that you can always return to. Creating the snapshot is as easy as clicking a button that says Save Revision. You can always preview older versions by going to a previous version and just clicking the preview button. So it immediately shows what the status of the content was at that time. You can choose to diff that content between an older version and a newer version. So anything in red is content that's been deleted, anything in green is content that's been added. So it gives you a very sophisticated versioning model, as well as the ability to branch off of your content if you need to. It's an idea similar to code branching, where you can choose an old version, branch off of it, update it, and then return back to the main branch line or the main code line. But it's adapted for content, so that you can make targeted updates as you need to. So the next stage of the process is to actually send your content for review. So the writer has written however many topics they needed to, they've done their research, they've drafted their content. Now they want to send that content to review with their technical editor or their peer. Out of the box, AEM gives you the capability to do that with a built-in review tool. So you would simply select the topics you want to send to edit, click a button, choose who you want to assign it to, and then when that person goes to their AEM inbox and opens up their review, they actually see this dedicated review mode. I'm not sure why it's usually not this slow. It's usually a lot faster. I'm not sure what's going on. It could be the Wi-Fi, but it generally is a pretty instant process. But you'll see it in a second when it pops up. But essentially, it's a dedicated review mode where you access review and markup features that are typical of Adobe products, right? So you can add comments, strike through, highlight, you can insert text, and anything the editor would insert at this point is kept as a record within the system. And then once the person concludes their review, they say to the writer, okay, my review is done. You can open up the topic and implement my comments. I'm just gonna try to relaunch that. Being a little funny right now. So in that way, essentially what happens is that the writer, once the review has concluded, is able to open up the topic in that edit mode that I showed you. And there's a special review tab, and they could import the comments, they could see all the strike throughs, they can see all the inserted text, they can see the highlights, and they can simply go through and do accept or reject, so they can complete the review process. There we go.
Is there a sign-off process?
It's all handled via the AEM login. So if you have a user account for AEM, you simply log in, you do all you need to do with it. Am I understanding your question correctly, or?
Well, like, does someone actually say, okay?
Oh, sorry, you mean a sign-off process for the review. It's generally handled all between the technical writer and the technical editor. The sign-off comes at the end when it comes to actually launching the content. Sorry, I misunderstood your question there. So as you can see here, just as this sample review, I did this big strike through here and I added a comment, this content sucks on the right side. So in any of the review tools you use, inserting text, doing your highlights, the editor can add comments and a record is kept. When the writer actually implements the edits, they can view all of these comments, they can view the edits side by side with their content, they can import, they can accept, reject, and this record is all kept by the system. So in summation, it's basically a very flexible review tool that allows you to adapt to any QA process. I'm sure everybody in the room in their companies have different QA processes, but we all do content reviews. This is a review tool that fits any QA process. So now the writer has authored all of their content, they've reviewed their content, they've gotten tech approval from their SMEs. The next stage of the process is to actually build your map. So a map is essentially, for those unfamiliar with DITA and CMS systems, a map is basically, you author all these topics and then you choose how you want to arrange these topics to create a guide. What structure you want to use, what you want your chapters to be, how you want the content to flow. And this is the topic or map editor within the system. In my opinion, this is the best map editor I've ever used between all of the CMSs that Blackberry has had and all the ones that we've tested and evaluated. And it's simply because it's intuitive and easy to use. If you know how to drag and drop objects and use arrows to move them in and out, you can build a map very easily within the system. So this is a production map for one of my Blackberry Intelligent Security guides. To add all of the content to the map, I simply navigate it into the repo. So we have this area docs blackberry.com. And the way our repo is organized is, the structure we've decided on is, language, business unit, and then a particular product. Within that product, you have your guide folders, and this is where my XML topics are stored. To add them to a map, it's as simple as dragging and dropping into the right pane. To remove it, I can simply select it and delete it, which I'm going to do because this is my production map and I don't want to mess it up. You can move your content in and out. You can drag and drop it to different positions. You can group content if you want to move it as a group. And then once you're finished building your map, you simply do a save on it. You close the map object. And that's pretty much all there is to building a map. It's just an easy to use UI where you put the topics in the order that you want them. And it also offers capabilities for applying attributes on topics very easily as well. The next stage of the process is actually generating your output. And this is very simple as well. Really, all you have to do when you're ready to generate your final output is to set your map presets. So as you can see here where my cursor is, we have the formats that we've developed in Blackberry, one for PDF, one for HTML. When I created my final output formats, my GA ones here, setting your map presets is as simple as clicking a button and then telling it, what do I want this HTML deliverable to be called or PDF file to be called? Where do I want it to be stored in the system? What did-eval file do I want to use to control my conditional text and show and hide certain content? And the baseline feature here is actually the version control mechanism. So before I showed you the version history with different versions of that topic, the baseline is a method for just saying for every topic in my map, what version do I want to use? And it gives you very easy tools in the sense of, what is the current version as of right now? And you click go and it simply grabs the version as of today. So the version control tools it gives you are very powerful and very flexible. So once you've set your map presets, to actually generate your map is a one-click process. So I'm going to choose the HTML format and the PDF format, click generate, and then I simply have to wait usually 10-20 seconds for the PDF and maybe a minute or two for HTML, depending on the size of it. One thing I'll kind of brag about as far as the AEM solution goes is how great it is to have an HTML output format that essentially just relies on the CSS of the website. And what I mean by that is, let's say we choose to change some formatting for our HTML output. Let's say we want to change the leading or the font size, or as we've done recently is redesign the table of contents. Because it all relies on the CSS of the website, they can make the change, push it live, and then it applies retroactively to all content HTML that we've posted previously and all future content in the future. So it's very powerful, very flexible. In some of the limited web solutions we had previously, a new web format would mean regenerating all of your output, taking thousands of files, re-uploading them to the website to the point where it wasn't even worth doing because it would be so much overhead. But when we redesigned the TOC a couple months ago, we tested it on staging and then pushed it to the live site, and then all of our 4,000, 5,000 documents had that new table of contents immediately because it simply relied on the CSS of the AEM website. So as you can see, this is the HTML output. It's got a consistent design. The writer in creating this only had to worry about the quality of their content and following data rules. The output handled the rest. Likewise, we have our PDF output format. I'll just open it up real quick. And basically the PDF output format is the same thing, right? It's got set styles and standards. It's got a defined cover page, set formatting for tables, set font sizes, set treatments of special elements, such that the writer only has to worry about their job of producing content. Formatting is offloaded to our output formats. All right, so at this point, we now move away from the CMS portion where you created your content and generated your outputs, and you actually go into the core web platform and you build your product page. So as a writer, I don't have to rely on a web developer to create my product page. So if I'm writing the docs for the Blackberry Intelligent Security product, I don't have to log a ticket for a web developer that says create a product page for me for Blackberry Intelligent Security. The web team simply created templates for us that are very easy to use. They're WYSIWYG. I'll give it a second to flip into edit mode so I can show you what I mean. But they simply give us these templates that we copy and create and use, and then we can populate it with our content. So this is an AEM page, an AEM web page that I've created for my Blackberry Intelligent Security product, and it's all just consisting of different components of content. So I'll give it one more second to load up. Again, I think the Wi-Fi here might be a little spotty because this is much longer than it usually takes. But you can see here I have a hero banner that has the name of my product, a short description, a button, and this was all put together by an AEM component that says hero. So I simply click on that component. There we go. click on that component and click the configure button, and I can define, what is the text with the heading, what is the subheading, what is the image I want to use. I can select this button and tell it what is the text on the button, where do I want it to link to. I have my product icon here that's just an image box that I drag and drop my icon into from a repository, a text box with a description of my product. And the most important component, which is actually this product component. So this is where we link the core AEM web page to our generated content. So a product component simply has an icon box where we add the icon for that deliverable, in this case, an icon for the release notes. A title and text box where I say, here is my release notes, here are a few keywords for what release notes are. And then there's this product box that I've configured to link to my generated release notes output, such that when the user actually goes to the live website, and I can do that right now, I'll go to docs.blackberry.com. So from our home page, I have a link to my BlackBerry Intelligent Security live page. So if I as a customer want to view the release notes, I simply click on this block. Again, it's taking a long time to load for some reason. But when I click on that block, I now open my release notes that I've generated from my XML content in my map object. So in that way, the writer has full control over building their product page and generating their content and linking their product page to their content. So again, it's a WYSIWYG interface. It's intuitive, it's easy to use. I can say from experience, it was quite easy to upskill our writers in how to use these templates to create product pages. So much so that we were able to build an entire website in 1 calendar year. And probably the last 2 months or so was building that entire website bit. And the last step, I don't necessarily have to show you because it's quite easy to do. Once you finish your product page, you generated all your outputs. You get approval from your manager who reviews everything, make sure it's good to go. You do one button to roll it out to a staging path, and then you do one more button to publish the content to the live site. It's amazing to have this level of control, because if I am a writer and I made a mistake on the product page, like a typo, I can go into the template, fix the typo, roll it out and publish it in again in a matter of minutes. I don't have to rely on any kind of middleman in the process to efficiently update my site, generate content, fix content. It's a very smooth and quick process. Make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, great. So the next bit, this is actually where I get to show you some of the cool and interesting things that we've started to do with the tool. Now that we've finished the migration, we've been live since October of last year. We did the basic work of creating a new website and figuring out how to translate our new content for the new website with new outputs and just get it all up and running. But now I actually get to show you some of the cool experimental things that we've been doing now that we have complete control over our tool set. So the first example is actually something quite simple, but sometimes simple ideas can actually go a long way. So I was at a tech writers conference earlier this year. The keynote speaker, his name was Adam Toporek, and his session was called Be Your Customer's Hero. And it was all about practical strategies for making your documentation more useful for your customers. He shared some data to prove that one of the key uses of docs was to evaluate the business value of a product before a customer or prospective customer decides to purchase it. That made me think about BlackBerry's docs and how we address customer value. BlackBerry's docs have always been good about stating the value of a product, right? So we say, for example, this product will make communication more reliable and secure. But we stop short at the general. We don't get into real world use cases about this particular product was purchased by X customer who used it for this particular goal. And I wanted to figure out how we could get more of that information integrated with the docs. So I actually talked to the team that creates the marketing content for blackberry.com, who actually also use the AEM platform. And I actually found out that they have an entire repo of customer success stories in different formats, from PDF case studies to short videos. And one of the goals of our new site was actually to break down silos at BlackBerry and to do a better job of integrating in intelligent ways the docs with marketing, with support, and with sales material. So to that end, we decided to add an attractive visual link to our product pages to link to this repo of success stories. And I can show you really quickly what that actually looks like. In terms of the technical specifics of how we did this, it was very easy. As I showed you before, we have these web templates. This customer success stories link. All we had to do is decide what we wanted the image to be, what we wanted the text to be. You populate an image component on the page, and then you say, I want this image to link to this particular URL in the marketing repo. So now if you're a customer interested in Blackberry UEM, which is our flagship, and you wanted to see real customer success stories, all you have to do is click on that link. Real world examples of how UEM has been used by our customers to achieve their goals and arrive at successful conclusions. So it was a very simple change, but again, sometimes very simple things. And with the tools already at our to develop anything or create anything new. This was simply using a component we already had and doing a little bit of work to add a new feature to our product pages. So it was a very quick win with not a whole lot of new effort. The second thing I'd like to talk about is how we use metadata to improve the search experience. With the AEM CMS, you have a flexible metadata model that can be used to make any search engine more effective. So Blackberry uses the Coveo search engine. Does anybody, what search engines do you guys use? Solar or anything else? Yeah, so we've been using Coveo for a little while. We integrated the search engine for our site shortly after we launched in October of last year. But the initial experience of it was that it was a very basic search engine, right? It was a basic keyword search, and the quality of your results depended on how closely your keywords matched our content. The main sticking point was that the search did not leverage metadata. So it did not offer customers effective ways to look at a search result and then quickly identify what is the product, what is the version, what is the guide, and it didn't have effective search filtering options. So we knew that adding more metadata to our topics was the answer because it would give the search engine something to latch onto to give this useful search information. But really the problem was one of time and scale. So we have tens of thousands of topics in our CMS, and implementing a detailed metadata taxonomy would take a very long time. So we explored another way to allow the search engine to identify and use metadata. So we had already worked with our web developer when creating our PDF and HTML output formats to add some custom fields that our writers could simply use to identify or to add in, what is the name of the product, what is the guide name, and what is the version. So again, this is one of my Blackberry Intelligent Security guides. You simply go into the properties of the data map, and on the properties, you have this data tab that just has some very simple metadata fields for product name, guide type, subtitle, version. The writer types this information in, and then what it allows them to do, when you generate the PDF, it determines what shows up on the cover page of the PDF, as far as the product name, subtitle, version, guide name. And in the HTML output, it dictates what shows up above the table of contents on the left side when you're viewing all of the HTML pages of the generated output. So this stuff here is all from those fields. So really what we realized is the metadata that we want the search engine to use already existed on our maps, and as a result, it existed on our output content. So what we did was we worked with the Coveo search vendor to create a web crawl that would look at our HTML output and find these fields, this product field, this guide name field, the version field, and take that information and create associated metadata to our search results. We then worked with our web team inside Blackberry to just put 2 and 2 together such that the actual search engine will now use that metadata that was crawled from the site and display it with search results and also provide filtering options. And I can actually show you with a real world search what that experience looks like. So this is simply just a search that I ran from our site with the keywords activating a device or activating a user. So as you can see, there's numerous. With every search result you see now, there's now this product metadata that identifies the product, the version metadata, and the document metadata. You'll notice here on the left side as well, there are now filtering options. So if you as a customer, you've searched for activating a user, but you know you're most interested just in the Blackberry UEM product, you can choose that filtering option. You can choose the specific version of the software that you're interested in, and you can choose, if desired, I want the administration guide content. So now it's taken, close to 20,000 results, and it's pared it down to 900 results. Obviously, the first 2 pages or so are the most useful, or the only useful stuff. But But in this way, we were basically able to offload the metadata taxonomy to the front end of the search engine. We didn't have to implement any kind of complex taxonomy within topics that would require writers to add specific things within their topics. By simply allowing them to leverage what they had already been doing and typing in the product name for the cover page and the version for the cover page, we got the search engine to use that metadata to improve and enhance our search experience in a very lightweight, efficient way. The next thing I'll touch on briefly is actually our context help strategy and how AEM allowed us to make it more efficient. So many years ago, we actually used to build help and actually give it to the dev team. They would integrate it into the software. Many years ago, we moved away from that model because we found it to be too limiting, right? You're at the mercy of dev schedules. You can't capture late breaking changes. It was too limiting for us. So we moved to a model where within the software, they build in links to our content on our live website. With our old website, it had a very predictable URL structure such that it had, domain, product, version, and then like a string that we could customize. For example, a string that said activating users. So in this way, we were able to work with the dev teams and give them the strings that they could build into the software to directly link to our website. When we made the switch to AEM, we found that this model did translate, but it had some complications because the URL path was a bit less predictable. Sometimes the URL could be longer, sometimes it captured all of the topics in the map hierarchy. So we started to think about how we could make this a better process that gave us as writers more control. So essentially what we did was do away with direct links to pages and instead implement a system of redirects. So what I'm going to show you now is actually the entire structure of our website. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see it a bit better. But this is basically all of docs.blackberry.com and the hierarchy of pages that we've set up. So we have, all of our language landing pages, all of our categories of software, all of our products, all of our version pages, and then beyond that is the actual generated output. So this is the back end of our site. To create context help, all we had to do was create this context-sensitive help page, and then all of these that you see in this right column here are actually redirect objects. And all that is simply a page that has a specific string and defines a very specific URL, a static URL, where the only thing that changes is the language code and then the version number of your product. And then in that redirect object, all I have to do is configure it and point it to the actual docs content that I want the customer to be redirected to. So what that results in is a URL like this that I can tell my software developer, and I can say, please integrate this URL into the software. It's always going to be that. It's not going to change. It's static. The only things that change are the aspects that are injected by the software itself. So the language code based on the language you're viewing of the software, and then the version, again, injected by the build in a format that matches what we set up for the redirect, such that that URL is integrated into the software and shows up as a nice little question mark icon. So the customer can see it, click it, and then it'll point to the redirect on the site. And that redirect can then point to any topic that I've set it to point to. So in this case, it points to a particular topic about creating a BlackBerry intelligent security policy. The reason why it's such a great model in my mind is that it puts the control directly in the hands of the writer, because I can change any of these redirects, I can update them, I can modify them, and I can work directly with the software developer and tell them what to implement in the software. There's not a file of redirects somewhere on the server that we have to work with IT to update. There's no web middleman in this process. It's just direct communication between developer and writer. It's highly efficient, and it's very agile. And it gives, again, the writer, the constant theme I keep returning to is that the writer has complete control. Some of the cooler stuff we've been able to do has to do with experimenting with content design and architecture. So the web templates are very flexible, as you've seen. You could just populate it with different images, descriptions, and you can set the links to be whatever you want. For most of our products, we just create these boxes that link to and open up a specific guide. So like I showed you before, our release notes block that you click it and it opens up your release notes content. One of the things our manager wanted us to experiment with is this idea of breaking down these large monolithic guides. So what I'm going to show you real quick now is actually our UEM admin guide. So this is the older version of the UEM admin guide. This product, it's a server-based product that's existed for close to 15 years. It's been rebranded 4 times, and over the years, it's grown into a full solution. I'll expand the TOC real quick in just a couple things, just to show you how massive this guide is. And I'll open up the PDF. It might be kind of small, so I'll make it a little larger, but you can see the page count is just about 3 pages shy of 500 pages. So we call this guide the monolith, right? So you can see there, oh nice. You can see there that it's one of almost 500 pages. It's a very complicated thing for a customer to open up a 500-page doc or a doc that has thousands and thousands of web pages to find what they're looking for. So what we did was put together a different way of accessing the content. We got together as writers, we workshopped, and we decided to use the tools available to us in AEM to come up with a different experience of how to access the content of the admin guide. So now when you click on this is the latest version, 12.11 release that just went out the door a couple months ago. And you have the administration block. Now when you click it, it doesn't open a 500-page guide. It actually opens a new subpage that we've built using AEM that actually leverages the design of the web template to give your customer better signposts to the content that they're interested in. So each of these has now been, instead of one massive map with hundreds and hundreds of topics or thousands of topics, the writers broke it out into individual maps focused on a specific area of content or a specific area of interest. So if you're interested in managing users and groups, you can now open a much more digestible 50 or 60-page guide, which is much smaller in scope, to help you find the content that you're interested in. So this one only has 44 pages. So we were able to get creative with content design using the tools at our disposal. Again, there's no web development here. This is simply using the tools in the toolbox to play around with content design to help our customers find what they need the moment they need it. And actually what I did was play around with this tool, but in a somewhat of a different way, almost in reverse. So I write a lot of developer documentation, and generally what I do is produce one development guide that's kind of the one-stop shop for these different SDKs. So I'll show you kind of my previous version of the product page. I was always happy with the structure of my guide, but I wasn't happy with my product page because you wouldn't know that this one block is the most important thing on the page that gives you all the content you're looking for. So what I actually decided to do was, again, play around with content design and take that one block and explode it out into its own section that had, compelling visuals and just give the customer a different way to access the content by using these blocks. So it was still one map, it was still one HTML and PDF output, but instead of just having them click one block and find what they need, I now give them better signposts on the product page. So if they're interested in the overview, they can click on that block and jump straight to that topic in the output. If they're interested in the requirements information, same thing, they click that block and they jump to that chapter. So it's another way that the AEM CMS has given us the ability to get creative with content design, and we can do it now because the tools are flexible. The tools can give us the power to do what we want to do. And it's the same effort in my part. I still had to design a single map, do a single output. It was just a little bit of work for me to set up this product page and set up the links that I wanted, and it was very efficient. And the last thing I'll speak to before we get to the question portion is something we call the workflow. So this actually came out of, again, that keynote speaker session I attended, Adam Toporek session, where he was talking about two ideas that kind of stuck in my head. So he was talking about how one of our main jobs as tech writers is to help alleviate the frustration that our customers feel when they're dealing with the hassles of our software. Basically, oftentimes it's the case where, my battery lost. Bernard, can you just grab me the battery pack in the corner there? Yep. Or Rohit, anybody? I'll speak to you in the meantime. Yeah, it's just on the corner there next to my bag. Yeah, just on the floor. Sorry about that, everyone. Just give me 1 second.
Just give it a good.
Yeah. I would have caught it.
Football days. Yeah, you're counting on me to have that. And I came where you're from here. I may very well have hit Rohit.
Okay, sorry, let's give it 1 second so that can come back up. Okay, so while that's restarting, I'll just kind of continue on. So yeah, his whole thing was that oftentimes our job as tech writers, you have somebody who's tried to use the software, it didn't go as planned, so they're consulting the documentation. So they're already engaging it in a state of frustration. So two key things that he kind of said that stuck in my head were this idea that try to anticipate that frustration and do your best to prevent that frustration or alleviate it when it happens. And the other idea was kind of novel to me in the sense that coming from the tech writer world, we're used to writing technical documentation in a very specific, precise way. But one of the things that he emphasized was don't be afraid to experiment with a more conversational, informational tone, or sorry, a conversational, casual tone. Because the benefit of that is that it establishes a bit more of a personal connection with your customer. Okay, so I'll just reduce that. It establishes a bit more of a personal connection with your customer, and it can help to alleviate that frustration. So after that conference, I returned to work, and one of the first emails I received was actually, so one of the first emails I actually received was a support email that said, you know, you have this video on our site for activating devices, but it's out of date. Can you update it? Updating it would not be a simple thing. It takes 3 to 4 weeks as you re-record the video, update the screenshots, re-record the voiceover, go through the whole approval process. So it could be very cumbersome to update this video. But I started to think like, hey, we have AEM at our disposal now. It could take a month to do a video, but it could take maybe a day or two for me to use the tools I have to create a targeted web page that addresses this customer's hassle, right? This difficult situation. So we started to conceptualize this idea of a workflow, right? It would be a single web page focused on helping your customer complete a single specific task. It would be very minimalist in the sense that it used carefully selected language paired with carefully selected screenshots. It would be more conversational in tone, so it wouldn't be as formal as the long form documentation. And the whole idea was to take something complex and make it simple. So I can actually show you what that looks like. We released our first workflow about a month and a half ago. It's about activating your device and installing one of our products called Blackberry Work. And it was a simple matter to work with our web developers to create a new template that writers could populate in the same way they did product pages. So you simply set up a hero image at the top, you give it titles, and then you populate it with your screenshots and your text. So as you can see here, it uses very short text. It's very minimalist. It includes screenshots that are just as important as the text in terms of communicating steps to your customer. It's more casual and conversational in tone. For example, I would never use "that's it" as a step in the formal long form technical documentation, but it's okay here because you're taking the customer on a journey and you're trying to do more of that human connection. And one of the things we always try to emphasize at the end, we always try to make it 10 steps or less. We don't try to address every option or everything you can do. You just guide them through a simple path, and then you say, if you want to learn more, here's the link to our full documentation to learn more and do whatever else, whatever other sophisticated or complicated things you want to do. So this workflow approach, I think it's given us a lot of wins. So it's actually, I'm just gonna quickly. Yes, so it's created an easy to follow resource that I can share with support, and support can then send it to different customers and tell them, hey, just follow this workflow. It's allowed us to leverage screenshots, which we're actually not able to do a lot in our long form technical docs because they're expensive to translate, they're difficult to maintain. It can be produced and posted in a matter of days, right? I can turn over a workflow in a day or two. It gives us a new way to connect with our customers and to directly address the pain points of our products. So I can work with support and ask them for a list of the top 10 call drivers, and then I can turn around and make 10 workflows to address those 10 top call drivers. And again, it can serve as an effective gateway to the rest of our doc set. Okay, and then really quickly, I can speak very briefly on kind of what's next for our team. So very quick overview of the things on our horizon. So first, right now we use Google Analytics to collect analytics data about how users are accessing our site and the content they're looking at. In switching to an integrated Adobe solution, the goal is to just increase both the quality and quantity of that data and use it to make targeted improvements to our docs. Recently at Blackberry, we've had more of a focus on improving the accessibility of our site to meet government standards and to meet kind of the needs of differently abled users of our products. So we use a product called Site Improve that scans our web pages and gives us an accessibility score and gives us practical direction for how to improve our accessibility. AEM actually has a site improve plugin that we're going to be trialing over the next little while, and we want to integrate it into our QA process. So while the writer is creating their product page, they can run this plugin, it can identify what the accessibility issues may be, and then the writer can address those before anything goes live. And the last one is actually the one I'm most excited about. I'm planning a trial of content as a service. So actually, at the conference I attended earlier this year, some members of the XML add-on team, dev team, they presented this idea of content as a service, which, to kind of boil it down very simply, it's this idea of authoring your content within a CMS, doing some magic to kind of prepare it for front-end channels, and then front-end channels like apps or websites can query that content with APIs and directly present the information the customer needs at that particular moment in time. So for example, the use case I have in my mind that I want to try out over the next little while is, Blackberry has this compatibility matrix content, which are just tables that say, for this OS, X, Y, and Z are supported, these ones are not supported or have limited support, etc. It's a series of tables. In my mind, what I'd like to do is set up some web pages where the customer can choose their product and their level of, or their compatibility area of interest from some drop downs on a web page. That front-end channel can then use APIs to draw on the content that has this information in the CMS, format it, and then present it to the customer at that moment of need. So that's what I'll be trialing over the next little while. Maybe I can, if it all goes well, maybe I can present on it next year. So that concludes everything I wanted to talk about. Thank you for listening, everyone. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, I'm not sure, Bernard, how much time we have for Q&A.
It's flexible.
All right, good. Yeah, any questions, anything that I talked about that you guys would like more clarity about, or anything I said that wasn't,
When you say AEM CMS, you mean the XML documentation or Adobe?
do, but if I said it every time, it would be a 2-hour presentation. Good question. Yeah, of course.
How long did it take for implementation for
AEM CMS? Yeah. So yeah, just to.
Oh, I have a name for you guys.
Okay.
We call it, internally we call it AEM Docs. Okay. DOX. For docs. You might want to call it that.
And I told him I want him to make that name public as soon as possible, so I don't have to work around it in presentations. So to repeat your question, so you're basically asking how long did it take us to complete that migration from our old CMS to the new system and to get up and running? So basically 1 calendar year. So we purchased it in October 2017. We went on Christmas break. When we came back from Christmas, beginning January 2018, we planned it out. We made those working groups. We made all those tasks in all the working groups, and essentially it was 1 year to completion. Most of it was figuring out the logistics of moving the content from the old system to the new system. We built the new site probably in the last 2 or 3 months or so of that kind of year-long period. But yeah, by about October of last year, we were ready to launch our new site, and we had writers working within the new system. So it's about a 1 year process, more or less. Given the size of your team, it all depends as well, right? We have about 20 or so writers working on the project. Yeah.
Was the content migration automated, or was it manually authored in data?
Yeah, so just to repeat your question, so was it manually moved from one system to another, or was there automation involved? So I guess my answer is kind of automation. There was no manual reauthoring where you had to manually retype stuff in the new tool. The benefit of using DITA is that we all follow the rules of DITA. So as long as the CMS supports DITA, you're in good shape, right? It's designed to be plopped from one system to another, but every CMS has its own little rules and particulars about how to do certain things, right? So really what we had to do, and when I talked about working with that co-op student, was to create a script that would essentially scan the content from our old CMS after we exported it, make those little tweaks that were necessary for the new system. Then once that was done, you could simply plop your stuff into the new system and then just move it to where you want it in the tree. So the reason why I think our migration was successful is that, the technical aspects, I just worked with this co-op student for about 3 or 4 weeks to iron out the migration script, test it, and make sure it worked well. Then I worked with the migration group that I was leading to basically do a self-serve process of here's everything you need to do to take your map from your old system, prepare it, and then add it to the new system. So yeah, it did take time. We set aside maybe a month to 2 months for people to do this in stages to move all of their content along and not disrupt, daily operations, because we still had software releases to do. But it was very much so. I guess, do you consider that automated when we're using scripts? I think so. You know what I mean? Could we have done even more automation in there? Sure, but it would be hard to secure the resources to do that. Like I said, we kind of had to do it as a team of tech writers, but I think it worked out really well. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay, perfect. Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions or anything I showed that wasn't too clear? Yeah.
Talk briefly about the review process with your editors or whatever. So
Yeah.
the ability to send to like a team of people and they can, accept, reject, or edit other people's responses.
Mm-hmm.
Or a collaborative review.
Sure. So yeah, just to repeat the question again. So when you're doing that review process that I showed, are you able to send it out to like SMEs, like your technical SMEs, to get them involved in the review process? The answer is yes. So essentially all you need to do to participate in that review process is to have an AEM login, right? So if you have a user account, you can log in, you can view that review, you can add markup. Generally, the implementation and accept or reject usually comes from the side of the writer once all the review markup has been added, and then they can go through and implement it. But yeah, I mean, if you want your technical SMEs to have access to the system and access to your reviews, that's perfectly valid. Yeah, yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Do they need licenses to do that?
They need a user license for the AEM platform, yeah. Yeah. They usually come, I mean, I don't know the technical specifics of it, but usually you have, whatever deal you set up, you have X number of licenses. It's never come up as a concern in the company. I've always heard that there's more than enough user licenses to go around. Yeah.
We're starting from scratch with Maps as a document that have not been written with a CMS of any type.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend we begin with this?
I guess my question is, are you interested in using data? Like, do you want to author content and yeah? So I guess kind of a two-part answer. So again, to repeat the question, so you're kind of starting from scratch. Do you recommend like an implementation that I've kind of shown and talked about today, right? So you can take it a couple different avenues, right? If you want to go full topic-based authoring everything in topic-based chunks, creating maps, generating from maps, and then connecting it to like a website piece. Yeah. Yeah, so if, let's say for whatever content you need to produce, if you want every piece of it to be existing in DITA using the DITA standard, and then create those automated outputs where you just one-click produce a PDF, one-click produce an HTML, that could take a while. Like I would say, spend a year getting all of your content into DITA, and then spend a year building your website. If you are just interested in using the core AEM web platform, that's a bit of a different matter. Like let's say you produce all your stuff right now in FrameMaker or another tool to produce your PDF outputs, for example. You can build a website in AEM in a matter of months and just decide how to implement that content into your website, right? You can use those web templates that I showed to create attractive pages, decide the hierarchy and the structure of them, and then just offer your content in like a PDF format that can be accessed from your web pages. So I guess it all depends on how deep you want to go, right? Like I'm a big proponent of DITA. I love DITA because it gives everybody a consistent style. It kind of forces QA, prevents people from going off the reservation and just doing whatever they want with it. It's to DITA. But yeah, like in my mind, I would say switching to DITA takes like a year. Building and creating a whole new website takes another year, just my humble opinion. Yeah. Yeah, anything else? All right, thanks everyone. Yeah, feel free to, thank you.